Welcome back to the show. Slaughter. The situation. My next guest is a board-certified interventional radiologist and renowned authority in the non-surgical treatment of uterine fibroids. Ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, please join me in welcoming dear friend of the situation, none other than Dr. Dr. Lipman. Dr. Lipman.
Wow.
What's going on, man?
Thunderous applause.
Hell yeah. What'd
Wow.
you think? I thought you knew, Doc.
Thunderous. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for having me.
Man, glad to see you, man. Glad you're here, brother. You are a actually, it's good to see you because I hadn't seen you in a couple of years now, since before COVID-19.
Yes, pre-COVID, WAOK.
Yeah, back in the old days.
Yes.
In the prehistoric era.
Exactly.
But the pre-coronavirus era. It's good to see you, Doc, and I think that it's important for us to have this conversation. But before we get into the conversation about uterine fibroids and non-surgical modalities of treatment for that particular disease, we was bumping Josie Fuller, and I couldn't think of Josie's last name. And so Dr. Lipman pulls out his phone, and on his playlist he says, "Oh, that's Dangerous" by Josie Fuller. I'm like, get the hell out of here, man. What the hell you know about Josie Fuller, man? And he says, "Don't judge a book by its cover." Okay. All right, Dr. Lipman.
A quick story. I was asked to speak to a group of African-American physicians on fibroids, and the entertainment that night was Simon Alexander, good friend of mine. I didn't know Simon at the time, but I had heard of him. And this was many years ago.
Famous, and we supposed to be praying for Simon.
Yes, absolutely. Please say a prayer for my brother from another mother. That's who he, Simon baby. But so we went to this event, and he's playing the music, and he's asking for requests. So my daughter at the time, was now in her mid-20s, she was like 7 or 8, runs up to the stage, and he's this big imposing guy on stage looking down at her and going like, I got nothing here for you, asking for requests. And he's thinking, what is he going to say? Twinkle, twinkle, little star, or something like that. So he goes, okay, like, what's your request? She goes, do you have anything by Parliament?
Right, right.
I was like, what? What do you know about Parliament?
Yeah.
Because that's what she heard in my car, flashlight.
Right.
So he stopped everything and said, I'm going to play what she just requested. You won't believe this. And he played flashlight. So you just, you don't know.
It's a beautiful thing. You never.
And we've been friends ever since. So he's super guy.
That's a cool story, Simon story. Yeah, Simon is wrestling with a debilitating disease now, and it's interesting. I think he's dealing with pancreatic
cancer.
And,
So
I had pancreatitis, man, and lost like 50 pounds in 2 weeks. It's a crazy thing. Made it through though. Doc, you got like certifications and you are at the height of your profession, by all accounts. You're at the height of your profession. How did you originally come to the specialty of non-surgical intervention in a world and in a space where surgery is what doctors want to do? How did you come to this
It's one
approach?
of the newest specialties. It's only been around for about 50 years now. And when I was back in medical school in the mid-'80s, I had heard about a guy doing just, incredible things non-surgically. And so I wrote to him and said, I've got some elective time. I was at Georgetown Medical School at the time, and he was just across the bridge in Virginia doing stuff. And I said, I got some elective time. Could I spend some time with you? And I spent a month with him And I just couldn't believe the stuff he was doing. I mean, saving people non-surgically, doing all this stuff from the inside. And he's an interventional radiologist, and he's now an icon, in the field. He founded the Miami Cardiac and Vascular Institute in Miami. But at the time, he would say he was in this small suburban hospital, in Virginia, suburban Virginia, and kind of under the radar. And I'd heard about him, and there was an article written about him, and I was like, man, it's the coolest. This specialty is the coolest thing ever. So we're doing non-surgical procedures all over the body, treating stroke, cancer, peripheral vascular disease, infertility. In my case, I do a non-surgical procedure that replaces hysterectomy for women suffering with fibroids. Women with fibroids, even though fibroids are benign tumors, the most common reason why we do hysterectomy in this country is not for cancer, which would be appropriate. It's for these benign tumors.
And it's the second most
common surgery done in the United States. And fibroids affect 80% of African American women. So why are we essentially amputating black women for benign disease? Because if you look racially at who gets hysterectomies, Caucasian women get hysterectomies for cancer, which is appropriate. Black women get hysterectomies most commonly for fibroids. Why are we doing that?
Right.
You don't need to do that.
Right. Well, I mean, of course, from my perspective, I'm kind of clear on why that is, and that's it's a eugenics kind of thing. It's a targeted. What do they call it? The Mississippi appendectomy.
And Fannie Lou Hamer, the Mississippi appendectomy.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
there's certainly a layer of that. There's no question that plays into it. It's also something, medicine is very resistant to change. Once you get into a certain pattern, pharmaceutical reps know that. Once they get their docs prescribing certain medication, it's hard to get for them to change. So change doesn't happen very quickly, particularly in medicine. Yeah. And hysterectomy was the thing that was just done, and no one questioned it. And fortunately now, in fact, I just heard of a new series that OWN is going to do, the Oprah Winfrey Network, conversations about fibroids. It's way overdue. Women have been suffering with these benign tumors for years, and no one was talking about it.
So let's just get down to brass tacks. What's the cause of fibroids?
Well, nobody knows where they come from, but once they arrive, they grow with estrogen hormones. That's why they can grow rapidly during a woman when she's pregnant, and why it tends not to be an issue for women typically once they're in menopause. But nobody knows where they come from because we haven't spent any money on research. You see all this research for cancer and AIDS and heart disease, very little research on fibroids.
And you're saying that, and the statistics show that 80% of black women get them, which means only 20% of white women get them, which is that your answer there, right?
No, I would say probably somewhere in the 40 to 40% range for white women.
Okay.
So it's much more common in black women, but women of all races get them. It's just the most racially African-American women get them more than any other racial group. Asian women, the lowest incidence, and then everyone else kind of, falls in between.
Has there been, or is there any research that looks specifically at diet and the relationship between diet and fibroids?
It's definitely a factor. As I said, hormones make fibroids grow, particularly estrogen. And hormones, unfortunately, are pervasive in the food supply, even in the drinking water. So we try to tell patients, try to avoid the hormone-rich foods, red meat, non-organic chicken, dairy, and try to beef up on colored fruits and vegetables because they have flavonoids in them, which block an important enzyme in estrogen production. So increase your colored fruits and vegetables, try to limit hormone-rich foods. You can try to exercise because exercise will, you'll lose excess body fat. Estrogen is stored and produced in body fat. Again, one of the reasons it is, that African-American women disproportionately suffer is they, in general, have more body fat on them than other racial groups. And so they're more likely to get fibroids. They get them earlier in life. They get them bigger, more numerous, and they're more likely to get hysterectomy than anyone else. But you can't really pick your parents. That's a genetic thing. There's a genetic predisposition for fibroids in Black women. You can't do anything about that, but you can do some of these other things. You can try to eat better. You can try to lose excess body fat. Vitamin D is really important. Vitamin D is a very powerful anti-fibroid growth hormone. It's actually a hormone, technically, not a vitamin. Only 10% of African-American men or women have adequate vitamin D. It's because we get it through absorption in the skin, and the darker the pigmentation of your skin, the harder it is to get adequate vitamin D. So we try to check vitamin D levels to make sure that they're adequate. That's important. Hair relaxers, even though that's not as much of an important thing now as more women are having their hair natural. Back in the day, I used to see a lot of women that were using hair relaxers, and if you look at the main ingredient in it, it's very similar to estrogen. So essentially, kind of the scalp is very vascular, and they would, get a lot more estrogen-like compounds in the system. So it's multifactorial, but there are certain things we can do and certain things we have no control over.
So, so with your work, then more than likely you see a large number of Black women and Black women patients.
My practice is probably 90% Black women.
Interesting. And what is your success rate with treating this disease?
90% of patients get significant relief or complete resolution of all their symptoms from fibroids, whether it's heavy menstrual periods, that's the most common reason why women have heavy periods, pelvic pain, urinary frequency, constipation, painful sex, whatever these fibroids are hard and firm and they press on things. So it's the most common reason why women have heavy periods. But whatever the symptom is that they're causing, 9 out of 10 will be able to get the relief they're looking for without any surgery whatsoever. They go home the same day with a Band-Aid. That's it. No surgery, no hospital, no general anesthesia. They leave the same day with a Band-Aid. That's it.
Doc.
Wow.
And again, I've interviewed you at least a couple of times before, and we've talked about just the frequency and the of this disease as it relates to Black women. What should be done, do you think, from your space, from your view? What is the thing that Black women can do to try to avoid having to deal with fibroid issues?
There's a couple of things. One, increase the conversation in the community. Women, it's an embarrassing topic to talk about your periods. There's a lot of taboo socially against talking about your periods, not only amongst even women, but women and men. Men have to get into this conversation because if they're with a woman, they may be facing these issues and have to understand it. I can say this because she went public with it, but I treated Cynthia Bailey from Real Housewives. Peter didn't understand at all. He just, when you're bleeding so heavily with fibroids and, you're wearing, these all sorts of gear and pads and even diapers, you're gushing and flooding. It's embarrassing. And it's also draining physically because you're losing a lot of blood each month. So they're tired and weak. And so the relations between Cynthia and Peter stopped. And all from his perspective was, well, I'm not getting mine. She must not love me. She loved him, but she was going through this and he didn't understand it. And then once we got to an understanding and he realized what she was going through, and she got the UFE procedure with us, and she got her life back, and she said, I gave her sexy back. That's great. Relations, resumed, and she got her life back, and she was thrilled. So the point is, the men don't understand this, and they need to understand this. They need to understand what their women are going through and empathize with us and support them. So conversations, mother, daughter, sisters, talking about fibroids, talking about periods, it's not taboo. It's important to talk about. It's a huge health issue. And so increase the conversation, increase the research. There's legislation in both houses, the Stephanie Tubbs-Jones Fibroid Research and Education Act. There's a Senate side of that with Cory Booker being the lead on that. On the House side, it's a representative from New York, supported by the Vice President. And so we've got to get this Research Act through. It's going to increase, it's going to give much needed funding to find out where fibroids come from so that we can finally, address that, and also increase the education, not only to the public, but to physicians to know about procedures like UFE, which, uterine fibroid embolization is one of the biggest medical breakthroughs for women, particularly women of color who disproportionately suffer with fibroids, but nobody knows to ask about it. All they hear about is surgery. Either deal with it or get operated on. And we can replace hysterectomies that are done for fibroids completely with procedures like UFE, but you got to know about it. Instead, there's a lot of women just suffer in silence. Over 1 million women are suffering in silence because they don't want surgery. I don't blame them. They don't want a hysterectomy because there's lots of issues with that, but they don't know about UFE.
Do you experience, or have you experienced any pushback from mainstream physicians and the what I call the healthcare industrial system?
Certainly, yes. Because any kind of disruptive technology, and this has been around for a long time. We've been doing, I did one of the first, UFEs done here in Georgia many years ago. And that's what we're known for at the Atlanta Fibroid Center is doing this UFE procedure. But of course, any disruptive technology, whether it's in medicine or any other industry, is very threatening to those that have the status quo. So if you're in the candle industry and making candles and everything, everyone, every household relies on the candle, and all of a sudden Edison comes along with a light bulb, it's very threatening to those that make their livelihood on candles.
Yeah, or Lewis Latimer, who made the light bulb that worked. Okay. Okay.
You get my point.
I get your point. Yeah, of course. Would you talk about the wrinkle that COVID-19 and moving into the coronavirus era has brought as relates to people accessing the treatment that you offer?
It certainly was very difficult and remains a challenge. I mean, initially it was we were shut down, like a lot of places were shut down. And then we had to try to work through, how do we still provide an important service? Because the hospitals were completely shut down because of the ICUs were full. So they couldn't do any elective procedures. Our procedure is outpatient and elective. And so we were an important resource, kind of a safety valve for the hospitals and to still provide an important service for the community. And it remains a challenge because, there's ebbs and flows with this, and, we doing the best we can to try to stay open and provide this much needed service to our community.
When I mentioned coronavirus, and interesting data was that the last I checked, it was something like 30% of medical professionals refusing to receive the vaccine. What do you think that's about? Why do you think that medical professionals, in particular, and I think the rate is even higher among African American medical professionals? Why do you think that is?
I'm just guessing because I am vaccinated. I did get the vaccine. Those that don't get the vaccine, if they're particularly individuals of color, based on our history of medical experimentation, and so there may be a reluctance because of that history, and it's understandable. It seemed like this technology kind of was, rushed forward, even though it was claimed that the backbone of it was well tested, but we did kind of get it quickly, and so some may be reluctant to trust something that was somewhat developed, at least the part of it developed fairly quickly, and not given the time that a lot of things in medical research, can take years to make sure that this is something safe and effective. Because, there has been issues in the past where we had things in medicine brought quickly. What comes to mind, the thalidomide stuff. It was a treatment for
radiation kind
for
of
sickness. Some women would get very sick and throw up during their early pregnancy, and so this medication was given to treat the morning sickness. The problem was it caused birth defects. So in this case, the cure the cure was worse than the disease, and it was harmful. So you have to be careful, and so I think some of the reluctance there may have been, historical, and the perception that this was maybe brought quickly and too quick.
Okay, so if there is someone who might be paying attention to us now, and who might be experiencing pain associated with fibroids, how would you suggest that they make contact with you?
Well, these days with the internet, it's very easy to find me. We're at the Atlanta Fibroid Center. I'm the founder of the Atlanta Fibroid Center here in Atlanta. It's in Smyrna. So there's a website, atlii.com. That's our website. That's the parent company, Atlanta Interventional Institute. So atlii.com, or if they're Instagram, it's dr_ my last name. So it's dr_Lipman. Or they can go on YouTube. There's numerous videos on fibroids and UFE that they could look at Atlanta Fibroid Center. Or they can do the old-fashioned way and just call the office, 770-953-2600.
Cool. Flash that up on there, Craig. Let's see the.
Yep.
Let's see the.
There's the website.
Mm-hmm. Are you ready to be fibroid free with UFE? All right.
Home the same day with a Band-Aid. That's it. A Band-Aid.
Hey, I really want sisters to get hip to this and to pick up on this thing, because I mean, if one could avoid the trauma to the body associated with surgery and get another procedure that is just as effective, then I don't see why people wouldn't opt to do that.
It's just it's a not knowing that this option exists is the main impediment here, because nobody wants hysterectomy. Nobody wants to lose an organ they were born with. Right. Losing your uterus has a lot of negative things that happen to women, because the average age of hysterectomy in this country is 39.
Right.
And I've met way too many women less than 30. I spoke at Tuskegee not long ago.
The great Tuskegee University, and where great people graduate from. Yeah.
Yes. and 3 women came up to me afterwards, less than 30, had already had a hysterectomy. They were in tears. No one ever told them. Now they wanted children. That's not going to happen. Right. And we've had numerous children born after UFE. So that remains possible for women. But it was tragic. These are young women. So we're not talking about old women. Young women in their 20s, 30s, 40s are undergoing life-altering surgery, and again, I think the cure is worse than the disease here, because fibroids are benign tumors; they're not cancer.
How many? And I noticed that you are adjunct at Morehouse School of Medicine.
Yes.
And I was thinking about perhaps those statistics wouldn't be as such if more African American doctors interned or did residencies in what is the
interventional radiology.
It
is becoming more diverse. You're right. I mean, it's predominantly male back in my day, but over much more recently, there's an emphasis on diversity. Men of color, women, other minorities are getting into the specialties, which is great. We do need to emphasize diversity. In fact, I interview prospective medical students for Morehouse, and it's their mission to increase the diversity, and it needs to be done. It's absolutely important.
Excellent. All right, give us the information again about how to get in contact with you, Doc.
Website, atlii.com, Instagram, dr_Lipman, and YouTube, Atlanta Fibroid Center.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, sisters, brothers, put your hands together for friend of the situation, Dr. John Lipman. When we come back, we will continue with the program. I got special guests on deck, so stay tuned. You ain't gonna want to miss what's coming up next. Appreciate Dr. Lipman for coming through, and we got to get you back, man, because we need to continue to blast this, to put this on blast. You know.
Thank you. Yes, it's important.
No doubt. Thanks for coming through.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you.